So we spoke last week about the nefesh, the ruach, and the neshama. The nefesh being in charge of the action, the ruach being in charge of the dibur, and the neshama being in charge of the machshava. And these create three separate worlds that through those worlds our imagination has the ability to perceive reality for us. So within us, somewhere, is stored away all the words we've ever heard. So that composes, that's like the kli, that's the vessel through which we understand our ruach, our olam HaYetzira. And the same thing, all the action, everything that takes place in the physical level, everything that we've picked up from the senses that pick up the physical, which is basically all the four senses besides the ears. So we keep that in a file that creates our olam HaAsiyah. That's our olam HaAsiyah is not the physical, it's our interpretation, our understanding of the physical. So within each one of us, we have the worlds which are created by all the activity that relates to that world. And this is the way that the ancients used to look at this, at the setup of man, in order to be able to make some order, in order to be able to understand how does man decide what to be? How does man create his own identity? And so the deepest level that we're discussing now is the level of machshava, the level of chachma, which relies in the moyach. So it says, "Ava chachma shebemoyach," which lives in the moyach, ya neshama, sheroi ve'ena neris, she sees and cannot be seen, rotzoloi ma she'ena murgeshes klal av beriyas alev, v'kenyan v'libiro ahar bechachma, v'zeu v'yipach ba'ap of nishmas chaim, va'av beroish nimshach me'amoyach. So saying the neshama is invisible. You can't see your neshama. Even by thinking, you're not seeing the one who is thinking. You're seeing what he's thinking. You're seeing the manifestation of what he's creating in this moment, but that's not him. That's the levush that he's dressing with at this very moment. But the actual neshama, the actual perceiver, is completely invisible through any of our senses. The only sense that can pick up our neshama is called the seichel. It's not a sense in the technical term. The seichel, the intelligence inside of you, can deduce that if you're thinking, somebody must be thinking, and therefore there's someone there. But you're not going to be able to have any direct experience of that being at the levels that we're in. The only way a person can have a direct experience of that being is if he ceases to think, so that that being can rest. And then, if it can remain within that being while it rests, then we would say that he has transcended his neshama. He's gone into what's called the collective. And the collective simply means that you are your natural self. You haven't added any additions to what HaKadosh Baruch Hu created. And then you're the collective. Then you're the original man. Then you don't really relate to your neighborhood, to your society, to your upbringing. You're not any of that, because in order to be any of that, you need to manifest into thoughts, words, and actions. That's where you can be one of those people. That's when you can have that type of identity. But as soon as you relieve yourself from any association with thoughts, words, or actions that have taken place in your life, whether you created them or anybody else, then you immediately lose your individuality. You immediately lose your perception of what life is, and you go back to the perception of the klal. You go back to being a member of Klal Yisrael. Like the Shunammite said to Elisha when he asked her if she needs anything, even though she didn't have any children. She said, "B'sech ami enochi yosheves." I don't have any individual self. I'm part of the klal. And therefore, why would I ask for anything? If a person doesn't have any individual thoughts, words, or actions, so he has no needs. And this is a place of freedom. This is a place of chayres. This goes back to the previous thing that he was discussing about, which is noich lelodem shelo nivra, that he can be beyond, that he doesn't have an identity. And so it says, when the pasuk says vayipach ba'ap of nishmas chaim, he blew it into his nose. He says the nose is in the head, and it comes from the brain. So we can actually see this physically, that nature presented to us, how the nose is coming out of the brain as our ability to suck in air. That air is going to go down into the heart and then back up into the brain in order to feed the brain. So the nose is the tool of the brain to bring in a new neshama, to bring in new thoughts. And these thoughts, if the nose is going to be calm, like where we have a carbon where we say it's isherech nichoyach lashem, like the nose is bringing peacefulness, or it's going to be like we say when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is angry, that there's a charoin af. So af again is talking about the nose, meaning the nose has been aggravated. Because again, the nose is that tool that brings the neshama into the brain. The nose is an extension of the brain to bring nuchayas into man so that he can manifest his thoughts. And from there he can go further to do whatever he needs to do. It says, these are three different levels within man. So the work of man, when it says Adam la'amal yulad, what does it mean? What is he really working on? He's working on cleaning up these three levels of manifestation. Because these three levels of manifestation are going to become him. The body is just a tool. The body you can't take with you. But what do you take with you? You take with you the worlds that you have manifested in thoughts, words, and actions. That becomes you. That becomes the levush that you dressed up in. And depending on who you're interacting with, different worlds are going to become more important. So for example, if you're interacting with a very physical person who doesn't understand much when it comes to feelings, emotions, or thoughts, beliefs, philosophies, he's not involved in any of that. So your only way to communicate with that person is going to be through the olam ha'asiyah. It's going to be through actions. He's only going to judge you based on your actions. He's not going to understand your words, and he certainly is not going to relate to your deeper thoughts and concepts. So because this took place, that people were so megusham, they were such a low madrega that all their interaction happened at the level of asiyah. This is the reason why our Torah, our pshat, looks the way that it does. Meaning if we were to give it on the level of Yetzira, or were to give it on the level of Bria, were to give it on the level of thought, or on the level of speech alone, then the people that we're trying to target wouldn't be able to relate, because they don't have the sensitivities, they don't have the tools to relate to a more subtle message. And therefore the Torah gets dressed up. The Torah goes further away from its source, from its origin, which it's trying actually to bring it back to a place where you can transcend thought, speech, and action. And it talks to you on the level of action, because that's where the people are. The Torah dresses up to talk to the people at the level that they are. And this is what Reb Tzodok says about the Egel, that because Klal Yisrael served the Egel, today we have to suffer with a tradition that we don't understand. And what happened over there? That when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave over the Torah originally, it was chayrus, because the principles were given over at the level of thought. And therefore man understood what he's supposed to do at the level of thought, and if he thought in those patterns, then any manifestation of speech and action that would come out of those patterns would be acceptable, would be bigdusha, would be helpful to humanity, would connect them to a source. But as soon as Moshe Rabbeinu left, the people couldn't relate anymore to these principles. They were not at that level. They couldn't make sense of it anymore. And therefore they started being afraid. They felt like they were holding on to nothing. To them, thought was nothing. And so what they did was, they created a physical entity and they said, this is going to be our siman, this is going to be our way of relating to the deeper mysteries. And so when Moshe Rabbeinu came back, he said, if this is the only language the people will speak, so then he took the egel and he ground it up until it became very thin, meaning that it became indistinguishable. It became very subtle, the way that he's interacting with the people. And then he gave everybody to drink, which means he made everybody learn it. And then that's the test. If you belong to the Erev Rav, then you're going to have a horrible experience. And you're not going to enjoy it one bit. And it's going to kill you. However, if you have a higher neshama, if you're a son of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if you understand who you're interacting with, So you're going to say, no way. Can't be that my Father, my Creator, is coming against me suddenly. He wants to hurt me? No way. I'm going to look deeper. There must be something else that's being taught over here. And then a person finds the Mesikus HaTorah. Then a person finds what are really the principles that are hiding behind the message. And one of the reasons the message shouldn't have gone into the level of Asiyah, one of the reasons it's so dangerous to give over instructions at the level of Asiyah, is because times are always changing. And so what was right then is not right now. And that's how we see that people look now at the punishments that were given out then, and they want to run scared from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Who are you? And the answer is, they were interacting with a generation that needed that kind of language. And therefore the Torah Sheba'al Peh was not allowed to be written down so that we don't freeze it more than already is frozen. We can't freeze the behavior of man, because nobody knows how man is going to evolve. His brain is not even fully there yet. So how are we going to know who he's going to be down the road? We don't. So all the instruction can only be at an extremely subtle level, where man can, in each generation, designate his own destiny. And that's the concept of Torah Sheba'al Peh. Torah Sheba'al Peh means those who understood the principles of the Torah Shebechsav can interpret what it means in each generation. Those who have not understood the principles cannot interpret the meaning, because they're stuck in an ancient time. They're stuck. They've created the reality that doesn't relate to today's man. Today's man will not feel comfortable in that Olam HaAsiyah. He can't live there. It's outdated. And therefore the Torah kept on being updated all the time. And Chazal updated even more. And we see the Onshim and Chazal are much lower than they were in the Torah Shebechsav, because that's relative to the generation. They adjusted the message relative to the generation. That's what the Torah was meant to be. The Torah wasn't meant to be frozen in time, but because the people weren't ready to understand the principles, so it had to be done this way, otherwise they would have gotten lost. Otherwise, none of the message would have survived. And that's why the Torah tells us, B'yom Pagdi Fakalati. Every time you're suffering, every time there's punishment, no, why is there punishment? Because of the Egel. If there wouldn't have been an Egel, there wouldn't have been suffering. If we didn't have to convert the Torah to a level of Asiyah and speak to you this language, if we could have told you the original principles that were given with the Luchas Rishonis, that brought Cheres to Klal Yisrael, then you wouldn't suffer. There would be no suffering. And so our job is to be able to find that truth again, to go back, to wake up our neshamas. And this we see that when Klal Yisrael woke up the first time, we could right away tell that they weren't at the appropriate spiritual level. And obviously we can't come with kindness to them. They were just a few months away from being in the Mem Tes Shari Tumah, meaning they've completely forgotten themselves. And so when they came out, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them the Mamar Anoich Hashem Elokecho, Parcha Nishmasam. They couldn't handle it. And what does it say? How did he show them? He opened all the seven heavens. What are the seven heavens? The seven heavens are the seven planets that surround the earth, or that surround the sun rather. The earth happens to be one of them. But given that we're on earth, we speak about the planets that are in orbit and affect life on earth. And so these planets also affect our inner being. They affect our relationships. They affect our health. They affect our family. They affect our bodies. They affect how we interact with everything in life. We wouldn't have the ability to interact with anything unless there was some type of ingredient within nature that builds within us that correspondence, that allows us access to those realities. And all these correlate to specific hormones, specific chemicals that get released within our body, the different lymph nodes and the different organs that are responsible for our homeostasis. All of them are developed and evolved by the stars. The stars cause us to be who we are, the way that we are. And so when you open up the seven heavens for a person, it means that a person suddenly gets disconnected from all his associations, all his kshorim. The relationship that one has with his child is a kesher in his mind. The reason he can have that kesher in his mind is because he's been biologically developed in order to be able to, in order to have those feelings for somebody who comes out of him naturally. And so those feelings is something that's not intrinsic in consciousness. It's developed biologically. And so when the skies are open, it means that a person goes to a place in consciousness where he has no kesher to anything. And then they suddenly realized who they really are. They suddenly realized their power. They suddenly realized how everything that they're manifesting, everything they're experiencing is of their own creation. And they couldn't handle the magnitude of what that means. And that is why, as soon as Moshe Rabbeinu left, they felt completely lost. However, it's expected from us to develop the ability to withstand such an experience. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to give it to us too. Not only does he want to give it to us for a moment, he wants to give us that gift permanently. And so, when we can evolve to a place where we don't need any machshava, dibur, or ma'aseh to feel comfortable, to have an identity, we can exist without any of those because we have found the true spirit of Yisrael, which is ki sarisem elikim v'manoshim v'tuchol. Elikim, in this sense, is talking about the Olam Habriya, is talking about the forces that affect your thinking. And so, when Yaakov Avinu transcended that level, when Yaakov Avinu showed that he has power, he has force in the world of thinking, that his will is more powerful than his thoughts, his will is more powerful than his experience, his will is more powerful than anything that's trying to chain him down, then he received the name Yisrael. That's the meaning of Yisrael. Yisrael means an entity, a spiritual entity, that is in charge of all the other entities. A person like that goes beyond the celestial powers. A person like that becomes a direct recipient from the life force that created all. And that's what it means, Ein Mazel Yisrael. That's what it means that Yisrael are Gedolim and Malachi Asheris. It's only when we arrive at that point where we've transcended all our attachments and all the different functions that cause us identification with the lower areas of our being, and we have recognized the true drive, the true spirit that's within us, then we're called B'Shem Yisrael. Then we have the power of Yisrael. Then nothing in this world can touch us. Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu calls us Kekoich v'Hashemayim, like the stars within heaven. That's the power that we have if we can arrive at that place. And obviously, no physical force or mental force or psychological force can bring us down from that place. And so he says, the beginning work of a human being is to start making Seder in all these different realities, all these different manifestations. To first take responsibility. Don't allow, at the lowest level, actions to leave your being that are not constructive to humanity in any way, shape, or form that you can imagine. And then you move to your mouth. Don't allow words that can cause damage to a human being to leave your mouth, to the best of your judgment. And the same goes for thought. This is already very advanced. This is only somebody who's already mastered his actions and mastered his words. Then he can start gaining some control over his thoughts. Don't think thoughts that are not in your best interest. If a person could just do that, just keep that little statement, don't think thoughts that are not in your best interest, then 99% of his problems are going to disappear. All our problems live in our thoughts. If we don't think, we don't have problems. And so, being in charge of your manifestations is what gives you the power to be close to God. Ad kedei kach, that a person who's completely transcended his manifestations, we call him by the name of God because there's no distinction. He doesn't want anything. He just is what God created, and therefore he represents God. And so, he says, these are the three koiches that are manifested. Avol, shnei koiches, chaya v'yechide, the two upper koiches of the nefesh, which are even deeper realizations of the truth of the spirit. Hem hamakifen la'adam. Rotze loimar, she'acha shenishlam bepnimis v'chitzonius kochosav, she'ein chayfetz ma sheziris rotzen Hashem yizborach, tzorach sheyeda shegam kol ma shemakev oiser, rotze loimar, kol ma shechutz menem ritzoinoi, hakeli rotzen Hashem yizborach b'lvad. So once a person has worked on all his manifestations, and they're all pure, Now he has to start integrating the things that he has no control over. They're also God. They're also God. Other people are also God. Even the people who are damaged are also God. And this has to go very deep for a person. But if a person can accept humanity and existence exactly in the form that it is, then he has a gula. Then he's completely left exile. And there's no power, no force that can hold him down. And that means to eat from the Eitz HaChaim. Because eating from the Eitz HaChaim means that you no longer have knowledge of good and evil. You lose that knowledge. There is no evil. Evil where? When a person arrives there, that's the Eitz HaChaim. That's the tree of life. That means that he is now attached to life permanently. There's nothing that can come between him and life. And so that requires that he digests all the things that he went through, all the things that he perceived as evil, and he starts converting them in his mind to recognize their true purpose, to recognize how they rose, to recognize why did they rise, what was the cause. Because everything comes from a healthy course, everything comes from a healthy source. It just gets perverted by misunderstanding. But nothing within us would rise unless there's a healthy reason why we have a drive for something like that. So for example, a person's drive for security is extremely healthy. A person must be secure in order to exist, in order to make the right choices. But many times, our drive for security causes us to offend other people. So that's already a healthy drive, something coming from a healthy source that has been diverted to something unhealthy. So when we look at the source material, when we look at what HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, we realize how much he cares and how much he invested in order to make sure that it all comes together and creates perfection. Even when we see evil, we can still, if we peel off the layers, see the kindness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu within. See why it needs to be that way. And therefore, when a person arrives to that place where he can surrender everything to the Ratzon Hashem, when you can realize that everything is the way that Hashem wants it to be, then he has a gula. Then he leaves exile. Then he leaves suffering. This is what happened to Yakov Avinu when he went to Mitzrayim. It says, Vaychi Yakov Beretz Mitzrayim Shvayis Reshona. So they say that the Vaychi means that he lived. When the Torah says he lived, he lived. He lived without Yetzira and without Yisurim. He didn't suffer, and he also didn't have any inclinations within that he had to suppress. Everything was pure good. Everything was the way that it should be. And the Shvayis Reshona is the gematria of Tov. He lived a good life because he had eliminated, he had found a way to conquer all negativity within him. The final straw was realizing that Yosef was still alive. That was the only one thing that he couldn't overcome. Losing Yosef. And as soon as that thing fell into place, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu agreed with him that he doesn't have to overcome it because it wasn't real, it was a lie. So as soon as that fell into place, him and HaKadosh Baruch Hu were seeing eye to eye. He was good with everything. And then he lived. Then he finally got to live. Until then, he says, 130 years I lived, ma'ad v'roim, he says to Pare. They were little and they were bad. But the 17 years that he lived, those were good. Those were real years. That was real life. And so a person is not done when he fixes himself. He still has to integrate into the bigger being. He still has to become one with life itself, with the people around him. He's a member of humanity. He's a member of Klal Yisrael. He's a member of a family and a community. He needs to be able to integrate with this reality and not find evil in any of it. Only then can he start living. And therefore he says, when a person arrives at that level, everything that surrounds him, everything that's outside of you, even if something seems to be against your will. But if it's happened, then we have to instantly update our system. We can't remain at odds with something that already happened. Because when we're at odds with something that already took place, we're never going to win. It already happened. We can try to direct the future to be better. That's okay. But we can't argue with what already happened. We can't argue with what already is. Once it is, our only job is to accept it. And when a person can accept everything outside of him that's not according to the Ratzon Hashem, then we would say that he's awakened his level of makifin. Makifin means the surrounding lights, the lights that surround and interact with your internal light. So your thoughts are constantly interacting with what's happening around you. Your words are interacting with what's happening around you. So even though you've learned to manage your thoughts, to manage your speech, to manage your actions, there are going to be interactions that are going to throw you off your game. So the bigger picture is to be able to integrate all that potential into the belief that it's all for the good, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu only created it in order to make your life better, in order to help you. Because only then can you use all these different elements to make your life better. As long as you're at odds with what is, you become part of the problem. You're not the solution any longer. So it says, when a person gets to that place, margish chaim anitzchim b'chol makifo, he feels the permanent eternal life that's surrounding him in every place. Every atom, every molecule that's in the entire universe is life that HaKadosh Baruch Hu manifested. You can't run from it. It's everywhere. So when it's your friend, you have friends everywhere. When you're not good with it, when you're not comfortable with it, you got enemies running after you, places you're not even going yet. Like it says in the Torah, benastem ve'en roidef. You're going to be running from things that don't exist. Because if the creator of the universe is not on your side, if your mind has placed you in the other side, in the Sitra Achra, and therefore you're at odds with the one that created life, then where are you going to go to feel safe? How are you ever going to feel safe? It's not possible. And so our only way to come home, our only way to recognize ourselves and be whole within ourselves, is not only to make peace with who we are and how we are and what we are. It's to make peace with reality itself. It's to make peace with the history of the world. It's to make peace with the place you were born in, the family you were born in, the schools you went to, the career you chose. Everything that's in the past, you must be perfectly comfortable with, because it already happened. It's the only reality you have. Life doesn't work in a way where you can say, I want all of life, except these two things I don't want. Life is a yes or no question. There's only one option. You can take it exactly the way it is. You want it or not. And unfortunately, too many times we say no. If it's like this, I don't want it. And that's not the right answer. Because reality will stay the way that it is, and we've just removed ourselves from it. If we say no to life, regardless of the reason, we've removed ourselves from life. Life goes on, and we stay stuck. And so when a person realizes this, then every single thing in the Bria is his friend. Because every single thing in the Bria comes from the same source, was created by the one that he loves and by the one that loves him. And it's there to support him, it's there to help him. This is all truth, this is all reality, we're just waking up to it. This is true that he only created life in order to support man. This is not some type of a feel-good strategy. This is the reality that we've been avoiding and ignoring for silly reasons, due to a lack of knowledge, a lack of understanding. But this was always the truth, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu manifested life in order to give us this experience. And everything within it is for this purpose. There is no other purpose. And so when we can realize that experience, when we can become it, that's when it starts becoming real. So it says, that's the feeling that Chazal speak about, where it says, Kol olam kuloi lo nivra elo bishvili. That a person, an individual, can feel that the entire universe was created just for me. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu can do that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu can create the entire universe just for me, and he can create the entire universe just for you. Not a problem. It so happens to be that me and you are the same one. So he certainly did create it for that one. Who's that one? It's the one that we're going to learn to be, which is identical in each one of us. That's Klal Yisrael. When we're all going to be Yisrael, then we're all going to be the same person, essentially. We're all going to be part of a bigger whole. We're all going to be playing our role for the bigger man. And for that bigger man, everything was created. And since we are that bigger man, so everything was created for us. And it says, "Yargish belev chaim amitim." Then he can start feeling what life actually feels like. Until a person has arrived at this conclusion, he's never tasted life. What he's been going through is not life. What he's been going through is being disconnected from life, being in a body and not living. But only after he's accepted himself, he's managed to transform his machshava, his dibur, and his ma'aseh to work only for humanity, and he's accepted all the other things that are going on in his life, all the other things that are happening around him, then he can taste life. Then he can finally take a breath and say, wow, ma Rabbi Masech Hashem, look what he did over here. Look what he created. Until then, as long as we're suffering, we can't see what HaKadosh Baruch Hu created. All we can see is our suffering. The lens we're looking through is the lens of experience. And when our experience is tainted, everything we see is tainted. And so only when a person is already at a place where he's not bothered by life, he's not bothered by the events, by the details, by the individual things, then he can start looking at life and appreciating life. And once he appreciates life appropriately, the little things won't matter to him, obviously. Because he's already in a different space, he's in a different, there's something so big happening, how is he going to make a fuss over something little? It's like, imagine somebody is taking you on this trip and he's spending thousands of dollars and he's investing everything in the most beautiful hotel and they're into the nicest car and whatever, and then you look into the fridge and there's no milk there for your coffee and you throw a tantrum. The guy's spending everything on you, so there's no milk. Get over it. So the same thing goes when we realize what's really happening to us, what life really means. So we won't complain about the little things. Who cares about the little things? It's just our mind playing tricks with us. Who said we even need coffee? All these things are just habits and thoughts and cycles that we keep doing to ourselves over and over and over again until we believe that this is how we are and this is what we need. But that's not true. There are so many people who didn't need that, who didn't do it that way, who were fine in many other ways, which means that a human being can do it. If a human being can do it, you can do it. The only thing that's keeping you is that at some point in your life you wrote down in your thought that I'm this kind of guy. I need this to be happy. It's much easier to change that than to change the whole world to give you exactly what you think you want. And that's our job. Our job is to go in there and change who we are so that we customize our being to our reality that already exists. What type of personality do I need based on the reality that I'm in? Based on the family that I have, based on the job that I have, based on what I want to accomplish in life? What type of personality do I need to manufacture that can give me the best results in this arena? And that can constantly change. Because we have that potential. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a full brain. A full brain means that we have access to all the potential settings that a human being can have. If a human being does it, doesn't matter in which country, it means a human being can do it. If a human being did it, it doesn't matter in which century, it means a human being can do it. That's all we need. It's all the proof we need. If a human brain can do it, we can do it. And so, with this type of attitude, a person opens up to life. A person can actually live. Until then, there is a war between the personality that he created and the circumstances of his life. But I'm like this, and she wants me to do that. And I'm like that, and I wanted to do this. And all these things are because people write into their brains opinions that they have no business writing down. Who told you who you are? Why did you come to these hard conclusions? How is that going to make your life easier? And so this flexibility, this ability to adjust to reality, to life as it takes place, this makes a person human. All the other habits that we have are different types of animals. The aggressive habits are the aggressive animals. The stupid habits are the donkeys. But they're all just repeating something that is not necessarily thought through, not necessarily humane. It's just habit. This is how I've been doing it. Well, your habits can be your enemies. And so we want the human presence in everything that we do. We don't want to do out of habit. We want to do because the human mind, out of compassion for humanity, has decided that this is the appropriate thing to do right now. The human mind, out of compassion to humanity, has decided that this is the right thing to say right now. And then we bring in our humanity into our life. Then we become human beings. Then we stop causing damage to the people around us. Because everything is coming from a place that's healthy, a place that's fresh, a place that's customized to the occasion. And people will feel the authenticity. A person has much more energy when he's authentic. Repeating old stuff drains you because there's no chayes, there's no life to it. And so when we're talking about transcending, we're talking about recognizing our true essence, recognizing who we are beyond all the boxes we've placed ourselves in, beyond all the labels we've placed on our forehead. And then he feels life. Then he feels what it means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created him. Everything that takes place, every detail, comes from the force that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created exactly in accordance with his will. And so life is quite entangled because we haven't been paying attention. But as soon as humanity will start paying attention, as soon as humanity will wake up from its slumber that it's been in, which is the Olam HaAsiyah. The Olam HaAsiyah is a place of sleep. So our perception of the actions that take place in our life, our perception of the physical part of life is constantly imagined. Because when we go to work, we're thinking about making money for things that we're going to need down the road. All this is in our mind. All our strategies of how we're going to get there is in our mind. It doesn't really exist. We're using our power to hallucinate in order to manifest more money. And this is necessary. However, this ties us down into the Olam HaAsiyah. This causes us that we can't become aware at the level of thought because we're used to such strong stimulation. We're used to such concrete things that we're dealing with that thoughts seem flimsy in comparison. They seem incomprehensible in comparison. But when a person starts calming down, when a person starts coming back to himself, and a person starts realizing the true nature of his experience, he realizes that really he never leaves the world of thought. We've discussed this before. A person can never leave the Olam HaMachshava. It's not possible. The only way that you can know even what's happening outside the Olam HaMachshava is through your biological organs. And therefore, only the Olam HaMachshava is real. The Olam HaMaaseh is a tiny percentage of the Olam HaMachshava. In the spiritual Swarm, they call it 10%. 10% of the Olam HaMachshava is Maaseh. Everything else in your experience that revolves around the Olam HaMaaseh is still a Machshava. All the business that we do it in the Olam HaMachshava. Even though at the end of the day we talk and we act, but that's not where the business takes place. That's already the side effects. That's already the result that comes out after. That you move the goods, you provide the services. But really the business where you're trying to compete, you're trying to become better, you're trying to design what are you going to offer to the public and how you're going to make money and how you're going to price it. All this is stealing your most important real estate, which is the Olam HaMachshava. And it's tying it down to the illusion. It's tying it down to the Olam HaMaaseh. Why is it the illusion? Because you can't hold on to it. Wherever you were till now, in the Olam HaMaaseh, is gone. Now you're only here. So where is it? It's nowhere. Never coming back. And so your experience was a fleeting moment, and because you tied down all your resources into those fleeting moments, so then the entire you is a fleeting moment. And that's why we need to start investing in Chai Olam. What is Chai Olam? Chai Olam are the principles that exist for eternity. The truth about life, about reality, that never changes. And those people who focus on that truth, they're developing man. They're developing our species. Because our species continue to exist. To the extent that our forefathers thought about us, we have tools to deal with what's happening today. To the extent that many generations forgot about man and they were just busy with the fleeting moments of their life, there's nothing left of them. And their children have to collect the pieces and try to figure out how to wake up from their slumber. Because all they learned is how to continue the illusion. They never learned how to connect to reality that's beneath the illusion. So realities are things that are permanently true. Reality are things that can never change by definition. And this relates to the principles of how life works. To smile to a person was good 5,000 years ago, and it's good today. Didn't change. Because it's a principle of nature that a human being appreciates when you're nice to him. It's a principle of nature that when we smile, we're expressing kindness. We're expressing a good feeling to another human being. And so this is a principle that never goes away. To understand all the needs of the spirit, to understand how to please the spirit, not just with smiling, but on deeper levels, these are principles that don't change. These are realities that our forefathers had the vision, the understanding to put them down in writing so that we can have access to them until today. Because they understood that these things are never going to change. And the knowledge of these things is what defines our experience. If we don't know ourselves, then we can't please ourselves. And this is why it says in the Mishnah, V'lo yamor etz chosid. You can't be a kind man if you don't know how to learn. Because your kindness is not actually going to manifest the way that you intend it to. You're not going to understand the principles of how to be kind. And so, if somebody really wants to be kind, it means he's going to spend time becoming wise. Because only when he's wise can he be kind. And so, this is the evolution of man. This is the ability for man, as he becomes busy with the principles of life, as he spends his time on the Chaya Olam, on the Nitzchis of what's here and what stays and what is and what always was. And he learns how to build in the Olam HaMachshava an experience that is worthwhile, so that when he leaves his body, he's going to be grateful to himself for having that experience. He's going to be grateful to himself for having the impact that he had on the people around him. He's going to be grateful to himself for having the realizations that he realized while he was still embodied. So as we do these things, we're building a permanent residence for our spirit. We're building something that's going to replace our body when we have to leave our body. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bless us that we should be able to see His glory while we're still in the flesh, while we're still in our bodies. Send us Mashiach Meher B'Yameinu.